Today's guest is Paul Dunlop. Paul brings with him over 20 years of management and manufacturing experience across a broad range of industries. In his operational management roles, Paul has led successful lead implementation and transformation using the principles of the Toyota production system. His passion for operational excellence using lean tools and methodology have helped drive sustained continuous improvement and financial performance at many client businesses. Established in 2017, Dunlop Consultants delivers customized lean-based consultancy, coaching, and training. Paul recognized a gap in the market for a practical and accessible approach to continuous improvement and leadership that works for everyone and delivers sustainable results by building genuine capability in the client business. The pillars of people, process, play, and profit are central to Paul's values and the effectiveness of his approach, with a focus on enriching the quality of people's working lives through inclusion and engagement and building cultures of problem solvers and learners. With human beings at the center of the change and improvement process, we can mine the wealth of talent and experience we have in our organizations to innovate and provide unique and sometimes simple solutions to the problems that frustrate and inhibit performance. Here's our guest, Paul Dunlop. Well, Paul, we touched a little bit about who you were in the intro, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, and how lean, continuous improvement, or Six Sigma is a part of your life?
Yes, thanks, Chris. So I'm Paul Dunlop. I live in Ballarat, which is near Melbourne, Australia. I'm a lean management consultant. I've been running a consulting business for the last 4 years and have been in the industry training and consulting space for 6. My background, I started on the shop floor, so a machine operator many years ago, too many years ago. And tread the well-worn path through leadership ranks. Guess I've always been passionate about continuous improvement, and we can talk about, the origins of that. Took the leap those few years ago now and into doing continuous improvement full time, which is an awesome place to be.
Well, Paul, I'm a big fan of yours. I watch your videos that you put out on LinkedIn. I think the word that I would use is authentic when I'm thinking about the work that you do. So I'm really glad that you're on the podcast with us today. But before we get started, we always ask our podcast guests to share with us a quote or a mantra from their favorite leader. And I was wondering if you could share your quote and tell us why you chose it.
I'm sure you've heard this one many times, Chris, but it's start from need. That has to be the one for me. So Taichi Ono. There's any number of quotes I could have used, but to me, that's probably a daily mantra and something that really guides me along the way. Probably another one I wanted to sneak in there. I was talking to Patrick Adams a couple of weeks ago, and he said, inspect what you expect. And I really loved that. And I said, Patrick, I'm taking that. And so that talks to me about standards and the importance of standards. And I guess I use the phrase, you walk past the standard that you accept, and that's really important. So I guess those two for me are the ones that bounce around my head.
At least you gave Patrick attribution for the quote. So you didn't really steal it from him. You gave him credit for the passing on the thinking. Billy Taylor, we had him on the podcast, and he said the exact same thing. Like whatever you walk by and accept becomes the standard, whether you intend it to or not. That's great advice. Well, Paul, one of my goals of this podcast, we talked about this in the conversation before we started, was I want to help other lean leaders resonate with your experiences. So you share with us the story about how or why you chose lean and continuous improvement training as your profession?
It chose me, I think. Look, I guess thinking back, I've always been someone with, let's say, a growth and improvement mindset. I probably never had a structure or a focus until my introduction to continuous improvement. So I guess way back when, as a machine operator, my first job I fell into in manufacturing, I fumbled my way through and just started to look for improvements in that process. So greenfield site, it was pretty chaotic and unstructured to start with, and really just sort of started to develop my own. the company I was working for at the time was a Japanese company, so offshore in Australia, manufacturing Japanese noodles in regional regional Victoria, Australia. But again, just because you're Japanese doesn't make you lean. But I got some introduction to 5S, and like I guess the people I encounter these days, I was like, what the hell do I need this for? I know where everything is and blah blah blah. But started to see value. And then my boss at the time gave me Gemba Kaizen by Masaki Imai, and that just blew my mind and really ignited my passion for this. So I started to educate myself. Again, me being me, that's what I do. I'm an avid reader, and just pick the eyes out of that and started to practice. And bit by bit, practice the tools, learn the tools, saw the value and the benefits from that. In parallel with that, then I became a team leader and a supervisor. So I became a leader practicing and engaging my team. I started out as a very poor leader, a very, very poor leader, and made all of the mistakes that I see these days, because again, a technical person, being promoted because of my technical skill, and then all of a sudden it's all about people and not about the technical part. So sort of just grew. We probably talk about this later, but really overcomplicated things from a lean point of view, read too much. And then these days I've probably come back to simplicity and purity. And as you touch on, you see my posts are very much around that stuff. But that's sort of my journey. I've been the functional manager for a long time, practicing and implementing, which is tough to find the time and the space and the energy to do that. But now, I'm very, very blessed. I get to do this every single day, and I love what I do.
Well, Paul, I started out on the shop floor too. My exposure to lean and continuous improvement, I was a young operations manager in electronic contract manufacturing environment. And my boss came to me and said, "Hey, I want you to learn about this, and I think it'll help you." And I don't need that. Jason, I know you're listening. You were right. I was wrong again. And it transformed my life, not only my life, but the life of the people that I was responsible to serve. And it is a people operating system. You're right. It's not about the tools. If you think it's about the tools, you're going to probably run into some of the pitfalls I think you're going to talk to me about here in a minute when I ask the next question. But it's with continuous improvement, the people lab or the learning lab of Frontline is probably the best place to learn. I think when it comes to continuous improvement. So can you share with us a story about what you consider your biggest career setback with lean or continuous improvement, any pitfalls or mistakes that you went through, and how you kind of learned from those and overcame them?
Interesting. I don't think I've necessarily had I've definitely had career setbacks. That's for sure. But with continuous improvement, I won't say they've been setbacks, but I've definitely made mistakes. And I touched on it before. I think one of the things is I've overcomplicated things. Lean is simple. It is simple in essence. It's simple in practice. As you said, and I keep saying lean is more psychology than anything else. It's about people, not tools. So I think I got very carried away with the tools-based approach. I read far too much. And again, when you read, I don't read lean books these days. I don't think there's any point, because it's very subjective. It's someone's experience, depending on where they've come from and whatever else. And again, coming back to start from need, well, that doesn't necessarily apply to me or my world or my environment. So yes, so I overcomplicated it, and I felt that I needed to be using all these tools and doing all these things to be doing lean. So I've learned that, lean is quite the opposite. Lean is very, it's a distillation of all of those things. The other thing, and coming back to the concepts of respect and humility, is that I've probably, particularly being a manager or probably early consulting days, I maybe thought or felt that I needed to know best. So I actually probably, was not actively, but disrespecting people, and particularly people at the front line, when I came in and thought I knew better or I knew the answer to their problems, which, is just not the right thing to do. And again, a lean approach should be the antithesis of that. It should be all about humility. So I think they're the two main things that I've learned from, and continue to make sure that I keep things simple, and I'm always a humble learner in any environment. When I come into a client these days, I'll be very upfront and say, I will learn more from you than you will from me. And I genuinely mean that.
I think that's a great answer. I think one of the things that I've learned and seen over time when working with people with lean and continuous improvement, when they talk about struggle, and I've shown them how to use the tool. I don't understand why they're not using it this way. I don't know what else I can do. And I just asked, I said, well, when you had the conversation with them, were you leading from a place of engagement or compliance? Like it's, and we miss that. I mean, when command and control is our natural instinct. You almost have to force yourself out of those mental patterns. But when you lead and instruct and teach and share from a place of engagement, your language, your nonverbals, your whole demeanor is very different from a place of, I've shown you how to use this, now use it. It's structural ability, and have I trained you? And I think people miss out on, you have to demonstrate why it's important. And I think you start from need. That's the first place that you begin with. Hey, I have a suggestion here I want to run by you based on what you and I agreed upon was a challenge that we need to face. So great answer from Setback. Being the distillation here is, be people-based, don't be tool-based. Work from a place of concern and genuine humility, because compliance doesn't work. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they don't care how much I know. They only want help. And that's my job is to support them, whoever that is, to make their daily life better. That's my whole, if you want to come back to start with why, that's my why, is to help and support those people, because I've been that person. So that's what drives me.
Well, Paul, I've seen that you've had a lot of success with the work that you've done and what you've shared in the public domain. There's got to be a moment in your story that everything just kind of unlocked for you. You're like, aha, like that. The moment where you knew you were doing the work that you're supposed to be doing. Can you share with us that moment in your improvement journey?
Yeah, Chris, I've probably touched on it a little bit. I think it's not necessarily been one aha moment. It's been a series of aha moments, and there continues to be aha moments every single day, because the power of teaching and sharing means that just through those conversations, there's light bulb moments for me every single day. And the incredible insights from the factory shop floor, and the way that people think and will articulate things, conversations like this. It's like, wow, I wish I'd thought about this in this way. So there's constant aha moments for me. And I think I have to practice what I preach, and I need to sort of keep coming back to that, is that I need to be a humble learner just as much as everybody else. And I need to be open to different ways and different thinking and different approaches, whatever it might be. I think my biggest aha moment probably was just figuring out that lean is all about people. It's not about tools. The tools are secondary. The tools are a means. They're the vehicle to stimulate a particular way of thinking and behaving and doing things. And I think that is it. And again, there's no need to overcomplicate any of this. We don't need to use Japanese words. It's just, if you want to talk waste, there's waste. The whole waste of time and energy, the waste of trying to translate this stuff, because again, this stuff needs to be articulated and conveyed and communicated in a way that people can understand in the most simple form possible, so they can touch it and feel it and use it and get the benefits from it. So I think for me, that's the aha.
I know in Western Tennessee that if you walk into a room and say, today we're going to learn about statistical process control, their eyes just glaze over, they tune out. But if you say, let me show you how to make a process behavior chart so you can understand how your process is behaving, it's different. So words matter.
Yeah.
Do you have a lean or continuous improvement pet peeve, or something you frequently see being applied or done wrong?
Where do I start?
From the beginning.
All of it. It's I guess the opposite of all of those things. Again, when it becomes tool based, when it's not. I guess let me start again. It's when it's a cookie cutter approach based around tools and not starting from need. So when it's a prescriptive approach that says, right, well, you have to start with 5S, and then you need to do this, and then you need to do that. It simply doesn't work when it's talked about in the boardroom and driven top down with little or no engagement or consultation with the front lines. That's another pet peeve. Again, over complicating things is a pet peeve, where, and people calling themselves experts and senseis, and it's bullshit, and I really can't be bothered with it. We should be better than that as a community. And I think I was actually listening to Calvin Williams on Patrick's podcast, and he talked about people from the outside of the lean community looking in and thinking, oh my God, these people must be idiots in terms of the way the infighting and the disagreements and yes, there's a spectrum, but how can we be so polarized in our views about things? Again, it's got to come back to simplicity and being accessible. It's got to be accessible to people. And if we want people to embrace this methodology, which we all know works and is a beautiful thing, then we need to make it accessible, and we need to engage with the people outside of this community. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of the things that annoy me.
Paul, I think that may be one of the most perfect answers that we've had on the podcast. If I had limited you to one pet peeve, I don't think I would have been doing my job to start from need, right?
Yeah.
But I do like the concept of accessibility. As part of one of the reasons that I started this podcast was just to humanize and make people realize that the thought leaders in this space are accessible. Like, they want to answer your questions. They want to help you. They're people that have a genuine desire to spread continuous improvement and do it in the right way, rather than say, hey, read my book, do exactly what it says, you'll be okay. It doesn't work that way. But there are some great books that help, but there's no one book. You have to immerse yourself in the entire body of knowledge around it and learn. I think I'm a lifelong learner with continuous improvement. I don't ever want to be the expert, but I like the term humble learner when it comes to the work that we do. What's one thing that you consider most important that you've learned in your career journey so far?
Again, probably comes back to that humble learner and humility part. I think, yeah, again, the number of times where, I've been, I don't know, rocked or whatever it is, but again, that idea of me thinking I should or do know better, that's been an issue for me. So again, I think the main lesson is that humility, and keep coming back to the concept of respect for people. That just every day for me, that just comes back to me, having to be someone who instead of talking, listens. I think that's so important. Is to be for me. It's my job is to ask questions, and to be really good at how do I ask a better question to unlock, to get to the core of the issue, to get, to help people, and stimulate their thinking. How can I do that? Because again, when I come to a business, a CEO or whoever will bring me in and say, Paul, we need you to fix our process and system issues. We need you to fix our cultural issues and to get our people engaged. And I guess the conversation is that I can't do that for you, and I'm not going to do that for you. And the answers to all of your problems are already here. You're just, my job is to unlock those. My job is to be the tour guide, if you will, with my torch, shining a light on things and asking questions. And generally when I start to ask questions, people just go, bleh, and tell me, hey, what's going on, guys? What are your frustrations? All right, it's that Paul Akers fix what bugs you approach, and away we go. So again, I think it's being open and humble enough to be able to go, you know what, I'm just going to ask the questions, and then I can help these people with, again, some very simple tools.
Well, Paul, what piece of advice would you give to someone who's listening to this podcast that's just starting out with lean or continuous improvement?
Keep it simple. That's the big one. I think, again, respect for people, and the experts are always the people who do the work. No one can know a job better than the people that do it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year. Nobody. So I think that's the absolute key. So again, forget all the book reading and the tools and all the rest of it. The core of it is to understand the struggles and the frustrations that those people have. And if you start from there and help them and genuinely support them, then success will come from that.
Great answer. What piece of advice would you give to someone who's a little bit further along in their career? Maybe someone that something that someone shared with you recently, a piece of advice.
I think it is to pay it forward. It is to be generous with your knowledge and your time. I think that's the ultimate for someone who, like myself or like you, have been around for a while, have, the scars and whatever, and the experience. I think all too often that people can be very closed off, and I see this in the consulting community. We'll tell you how, but you have to pay us lots of money, and I don't believe in that. And that's why I do what I do with LinkedIn. I want to give value. I want people to do this. I want people to get value out of it, and I want people to see it as something that, again, if I can do it, any idiot can do this stuff. So so pay it forward, be generous. And again, coming back to that humility and vulnerability, I think is very, very important. You're only as good as your last job.
Vulnerability, such a great concept, like exposing yourself to say, how can I get better? Like, what advice do you give me? Ask someone who is in a different period of their career view. Like ask the guy that's been doing the work, or the gal that's been doing the work for a month or 2 months, that says, hey, how can I get better? What advice do you have for me? Vulnerability is such an overlooked concept when it comes to leaders. And I'm glad you brought that out.
Yeah, because this. Oh, sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
No, it's just a good example of vulnerability is, have you read Adam Grant's books?
I have. I love Adam Grant. Yes.
So I love when I've heard him on a few podcasts, and he talks about his early days, as a lecturer. And he said, I was terrible when I started out, and he actively sought feedback, and it was brutal. It was really painful, but how he improved was actively seeking that feedback. And that's not easy to do. Again, in this field, when we consider ourselves experts, we don't want to hear that feedback. So I think, again, for the journeyman lean person, get feedback.
I had a the benefit of an interview with David Marquet, and he said, you're going to get ones or tens when you get reviews, and that first one's going to hurt. But he pointed out, you really want to seek out the sevens and eights because they're people that are on your side, but they want you to get better. And I thought that's just such a great concept of who to listen to when getting that feedback. I love the point that Adam Grant's work is great work. It's good stuff. And it's for listeners of the podcast, I'll put some links to some of his works in there, but I love his reading. Well, I know that you said earlier, you stay away from the lean books, but there's got to be a favorite book or at least an author or a mentor that you could recommend to our listeners.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a list. So I get, if it's lean books, probably, so, yep. Gemba Kaizen was, it has a place in my heart. So that's probably my Bible in many ways. I love Gwendolyn Goldsworth's Visual Workplace, Visual Thinking. That was a game changer for me. There are many others. I probably these days recommend sort of books outside of the lean world, so to speak. And there's a lot of books I think are lean books without being lean books, if you will. So, recently I read Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership, which I think is an amazing, probably one of the best leadership books I've ever read. And there's a lot of lean, there's Hoshin Kanri on just about every page in terms of everybody understanding the mission and everybody understanding their part of the mission, and a lot of fundamental leadership concepts there. So I think that's a great book. James Clear's Atomic Habits is another one, which is a lean book, because lean is all about habits and discipline and routines and building a culture around that. So yes, that's a couple there, but there are many others.
So what I love about Jocko Willink's book and Extreme Ownership is that was a pressure cooker of an environment that they were in from a combat situation. And people don't realize that, yes, those guys are warriors, but they're extremely deliberate about their practice, about how they get better at what they do, and about their craft, and it's about the team. It's always about the team. It's not about individuals or whatnot. His podcast is awesome. I think there's just a lot of nuggets that people can dig out of that about how you embed a process to get better. And it's not about, you can't, no one else can make you better. You have to make yourself better with the people around you. And I think that's what stood out to me about that book. I'm a huge James Clear fan. Atomic Habits. I have his newsletter. That's my favorite one of my favorite nuggets of the week. It's at the right time just to kind of remind you how to stay focused and what was important. So I'll put links to that in the show notes page for folks to check out on their own. This is my favorite question, Paul. We know magic wands don't exist, but if they did, and you could fix anything with an operation or a team that you were coaching, what would you typically fix first?
That's a very good question, Chris. I'd maybe fix two things. Could I fix two things?
I'll give you two wands, right? Just for you this time, because you're the first person that's asked.
No, thank you. So two things. One would be give people time. Simply give people time. That's the biggest resource we have, because all too often, the chaos, the busyness that goes on day to day, people say, yeah, Paul, this lean stuff's great. However, I'm just busy getting that thing done, getting the product or the service delivered. We don't have time for this. So first off, if we want to develop a habit, we have to create time to develop that habit. So giving people time to do it. In the beginning, that can be small increments. The other part is leadership. So yes, all of this stuff is simple in essence. We need time to do it, but we need leaders who are committed to do it and will take that ownership. So probably coming back to Jocko's book a little bit, is that a lot of my conversations with leaders is that, yeah, your reality, your world, your process, your culture is a direct reflection of you, like that or not. And there's stuff that's, completely within your control and influence, and there's stuff that's not. However, you can certainly affect that by the way that you're thinking, behaving, projecting yourself, treating your people, and all of those sort of things. So I think for me, it's definitely time, and definitely a focus on leadership.
I think to expand on that concept of time, it's not just patience and time. It's that allocation of setting aside the schedule of this many minutes or hours per week. We're going to be intentional about learning how to improve or applying the concepts of improvement. I think another element of that is making sure that there's an intentional element of time with reflection, thinking about what you've learned. How can you improve? How do you apply it? And giving folks that space to reflect, and not forcing them to do that on their own time when they're worried about getting to their kids' softball game or baseball game, or what's going to be for dinner when they're outside of work life. You need to give them space inside of their work life to be able to focus on that. The other element that I picked up on, though, is that concept when it comes to leaders is, yes, you cannot control everything that goes on around you, but the one element that you always have control over is yourself as a leader, how you respond and react to those things. And do you do it in a positive way? And I don't think that leaders really understand their nonverbal communication. They are the thermostat for the room. They set the temperature for everyone else. And if across your face, when you get bad news, you get surly and sour, and whether you intend to or not, you're forcing problems to go into hiding. I think just being that, it goes back to that idea of humble leaders, like problems are opportunities. It's like, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Now that we all recognize that it's a problem, we can work on it together. Those are two great nuggets about, those are two pretty good magic wands there that you waved. Well, Paul, how can people connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do, or if they have a question for you about anything that they heard on the podcast today?
So the best way will be through LinkedIn. So I have a big presence there, but just message me, and I will respond. So
yes, you will.
I'm committed to that.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you for being a guest on the podcast today. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experiences with everyone. I would encourage folks to go to the show notes page to see the things that we talked about today. And Paul, I hope we get to have you back again someday soon.
No, that was awesome, Chris. Thank you. I've been a fan for a long time, like we talked about, and it's a bit of, as I say, a bit of a fanboy moment for me to be on the podcast. So appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Paul. I want to thank Paul for being a guest on the podcast today. I got a lot out of our conversation, and I hope you did as well. Be sure to go to the show notes page at leanleadershippodcast.com and check out the links to connect with Paul and to learn more about his work. I would also encourage you to check out his videos on YouTube. As always, I welcome your feedback on how to improve the podcast. If you like the podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating on the podcast in whatever channel you listen to us on. Thank you for listening, and until next time, seek progress over perfection.